Well, good morning, friends, and welcome to Wake Up in the Word. Thanks for joining me today. We're in the life of Joseph, and today we'll be in Genesis chapter 39. So grab your Bible and a cup of coffee, and let's look at it together. Now, as we're getting there, though, I want you to be praying for some folks. Of course, yesterday we shared a little bit about the need to pray for Betty Moody and her family as she passed away from the effects of COVID-19. Seems like every time I turn around, someone else that I know is coming down with it. I think it's kind of ironic that the very nation that originated it, that's why it's called the CCP virus by some people, the Chinese Communist Party virus came out of Wuhan, straight out of Red China. They seem to have somehow managed to either avoid it or not paying attention to it or something. Their economies in full roaring blast, manufacturing everything for the world while we're full shutdown in many places because of COVID-19. It's kind of not more than ironic. It's almost spooky to see what's going on in the world because of this virus, even while vaccines are being rolled out against it, but obviously can't be rolled out fast enough to keep many people from suffering the effects. And some of those are happening to you. Praying for you today, Pastor Jay here at Cedar Creek Church in good old Fairfield County, South Carolina. Jay had to post, listen to this, I've joined the COVID club. Dear brother, that's not a club I want to be a part of. I've joined the COVID club. God bless you, praying that you'll get over this fast. But for the next 2 weeks, that means virtual services only for the church. And I see this happening a lot. Churches having to say, wow, guess what? The pastor and the staff or somebody else has COVID, so we're shutting down just to keep everyone safe. The kind of things we have to do in this day and age. So, Pastor Jay, we're praying for you. And also, Tony Carroll, praying for you. It seems like, does the whole family have COVID? Looks like Tony, Carla down in Georgia, that you guys have COVID. And am I reading correctly? Uh, does Leah also have COVID? She, of course, is married, lives in Tennessee, but do you all have it at the same time? Apparently. So praying for you guys, praying for your recovery. We've got friends, family members, folks all over we know that seem to be wrestling with it now. Our state has become a red zone because of the number of new infections here in South Carolina. So folks, don't play with this. Be careful, be as safe as you can, but still try to have a life. And that's the challenge in these days. So godly wisdom is necessary. Many of us feel kind of like Joseph must have felt when he had been tossed into the pit and everything seemed to be going bad. When it couldn't get any worse, he thought they sold him into slavery and he was dragged far away from home down to Egypt. But you know what? As you look at this circumstance, let me grab one more sip here. Mm. Yes, make it now. As we look at this the circumstances of Joseph's life, it seems like every time he's thrown a curve and something is designed to make things bad or worse for him, it's amazing how God can turn those circumstances around for his benefit. That's what we're going to see today in Genesis chapter 39. So, do you feel like you're at the bottom of the pit today? And you feel like maybe it's getting worse? They just tossed your COVID test to you and it turned out positive at the bottom of the pit. And you're saying, what else can happen? You know, God intervenes on behalf of his children. Notice something that you'll also see as a pattern. From the very beginning, you do not see Joseph reacting. Now, maybe he did, but scripturally, for the benefit of what's here in the scripture, there's not one instance of Joseph reacting, accusing, lashing out, fighting back in any of these circumstances. And instead, God fights his battles for him. Now let's look at how God blessed him in the middle of some terrible circumstances. He's been hauled down to Egypt in slavery. And Genesis chapter 39, verse 1 begins by saying, now Joseph had been taken to Egypt. Potiphar, an Egyptian who was one of Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard, bought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken him there. Now look at verse 2. The Lord was with Joseph. You see, friends, regardless of what we're going through, whether we are in the midst of, for many of us think, well, if the Lord was with you, you wouldn't have been sold into slavery in the first place. Really? You cannot take that kind of theology with you through the Bible and read its passages and come to that conclusion. It's not true that God's going to protect us from every evil nor every disease. Instead, it says, in the midst of his slavery, okay, his having been forsaken by his own family, being dragged off to Egypt, the Lord was with him. So it says that the Lord was with Joseph and he prospered. He prospered. As a slave, he prospered. Yeah, listen to what happened. It says he lived in the house of his Egyptian master. And when his master saw that the Lord was with him and that the Lord gave him success in everything he did. Now, uh, hang on. Before I read the other side of that comma, notice even unbelievers, people outside, will notice that you are blessed, that something's going on with you when God's with you. They'll notice the strength of character. They'll notice your faith. They'll notice how you're able to have the joy of the Lord even in the deepest and darkest of circumstances. And in this particular case, it seems like God was just blessing the work of his hands. And so here's what's going on with Joseph. It says that when Potiphar notices that the Lord gave him success in everything he did, Joseph found favor in his eyes and became his attendant. Now think of all the Egyptians, all the other people that Potiphar had access to that were perhaps slaves in his house by virtue of his position. He had quite a few probably. Of all the ones he could have named to be his personal attendant, the ones in charge of everything, he picks Joseph. It says Potiphar put him in charge of his household, and he entrusted to his care everything he owned. From the time that he put him in charge of his household and of all that he owned, the Lord blessed the household of the Egyptian because of Joseph. Now, hang on here. Is it possible that a person, a place, a company, a community, a country even, can be blessed because of the Lord's people that are there receiving the blessings of God to themselves? Absolutely. So, friends, if you're looking around our country saying, man, this thing is going south fast, going to the pit rapidly, our national debt now is exploding. It's past that magical 90% to gross domestic product figure, which means your country is in a world of hurt. It's 130% and growing. We're getting buried in debt. We're getting buried in the economic disaster that's encircling us. And we're about to be involved in a government unlike anything that our country's ever seen, one that is focused headlong towards socialism. It's a nightmare coming, isn't it? Can God still bless? Well, he can when there are a group of God's people that are seeking him first and haven't got caught up and turned away from the Lord into fables and other side issues that have not been turned away from their plan and purpose and God's purpose in their life. God can still bless through them. So keep that in mind. It says here that the blessing of the Lord was now on everything Potiphar had, both in the house and in the field. So he left in Joseph's care everything he had, with Joseph in charge. He did not concern himself with anything except the food that he ate. This is a beautiful picture here today of how God even has taken the house of a pagan, that's Potiphar, one that doesn't know him, doesn't care a thing about the Hebrew God, but he has blessed that house because of only one person, and that's Joseph in the house. So, believers, where are you today? Are you in the house? Are you, for example, let's just say when I started to work as a teenager, I went to work in a grocery store. Well, now, is that business being blessed because you are an employee there? Yeah, it's a very similar picture to Joseph being a slave in the house of Potiphar. If you're doing your job right and you're trying to help them run a business in integrity and showing them how they can do things correctly, make a profit and continue to grow that business, then God is blessing that business through you. It's just one of many examples we could use. Oh, friends, listen, don't think the blessings of God are over because the blessings of God will follow the people of God who are concerned with being right with God and following Him, regardless of what everybody else is saying and doing. That's something good to hang on to. And as we wake up in the Word for this Friday, it's a good challenge for each one of us so that, when things are going south, you don't turn around and act like the heathen. You don't go burn down buildings and attack people, you don't act like they act, because it always comes back to haunt you if you do. Instead, you're like Joseph. You keep your integrity. You stand for what is right. And when you do that, God's blessing not only flows into your life, but then it affects everything that you touch. So may the blessing of God be with you and with your household and with everything you put your hands to this week. And I'll see you tomorrow in the biblical perspective, and then next week, every single day, as we look more into the life of Joseph, as we wake up in the Word.